All my practice is actually centered around recognizing, relaxing into what I call genuine connection. I think it's a very personal flavor to each of us, because for some of us, when we drop more into a, let's just say, a state of connection, for some of us it might feel expansive or calm, or we feel settled. It might feel safe, secure. It feels like we're at home. It can feel intimate. It also can feel vibrantly alive. So, it depends on the person. And I don't think it's just one flavor. It can be a symphony of different things. When we touch really into a sense of connection, whether it's with the vertical axis, some people will call it spirit, God, the cosmos, the universe, right? Or the lateral or horizontal action, like me with the other. I think there's generally that sense of you drop in, you feel dropped in. As a teenager, I felt incredible insecure and isolated, and I had bouts of depression and profound sense of worthlessness. But I believed that by somehow having the right career, all of that would sort of help me to solve that problem. So it was the sense of I need to become somebody so that then I will not feel any longer so worthless. My mind was always fretting around this riddle. What should I become when I grow up? What should I become? And one day I was just so besieged with angst, and my mind would just not stop. And I went over to a neighbor's house where women lived who was a bit different than my own mother and the other women in the neighborhood. And I approached her, and she immediately stopped all her chores. I fumbled around. I don't know, what should I do with my life? And she said, stop for a moment. Maybe it's not so much about the profession that you eventually will have or what career path you choose, but it's maybe much more about what matters to you most in life. What do you think is most important? I think because I felt very seen and safe in her presence, her question sort of just landed in a very deep, wordless space in my own being. It just passed by my thinking mind, fretting mind. And as I lingered in that quietness, just two words emerged. And in German, there were wahrhaftige Begegnungen, which we can translate truthful connection or genuine connection. And the words surprised me because I'd never read them, I've never heard them, but I could feel that I touched into something really whole and real. I was able to cut through my depression in my early 20s through the practice of Tai Chi and yoga. And then that flavor, I think, more of the contemplative Eastern tradition sort of kept calling me. And I think what's also happening in the East, the contemplative traditions preserved themselves to this day. While in the West, as I grew up, if I would have said, oh, I'm looking for who I really am, people would just say, oh, why don't you just get a job, right? So I think in the West, we have become very secular. Also, the focus of many of our modern societies in the West is really outward. The only way we are encouraged to look more inward is through the practice of psychology or psychoanalysis, personal growth, but that's not the same as finding what is unconditioned in us. And I'm a big fan of psychology and psychotherapy, don't misunderstand me. But it often still centers much more around our persona and also our upbringing and what were the experiences in the past that shaped who we have become, versus the Eastern traditions still made a big focus on finding what is unbroken in us, what is already whole, and also something that transcends time and history. It's more about being versus becoming. real epiphany in my life happened on a morning in Tokyo. I had been living in Japan, and I was still searching for an answer, a way of understanding who I am and what my life is about. And in that morning, I woke up and I had the distinct sense that something was different. What was different is that I could no longer find that familiar sense of self, that notion of here's who I am and you are over there. So the boundaries had all collapsed. The whole world seemed more like a dream, very insubstantial. And yet at the same time, it felt more real than anything I had ever experienced. These were really hard days when my mind would stop questioning and fighting against this notion of not having a confined sense of self. Then it was just an open serenity and things were just happening, life is suchness. But most of the time my mind was really scared. And it was so overwhelming that I decided to commit suicide. I was going to the 7-Eleven, which was a convenience store 24 hours open in Tokyo. I was looking for razors. And then my cell phone rang, and it was a man I didn't know that well. But he had woken up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., with a strong urgency that he had to call me. He just knew, oh my God, I need to call Annette. So I was in the convenience store, and then I took the phone, and I thought I was just very calm, buying razors and ending my life. But when I answered the phone, I also realized actually how upset I was, because I screamed in the phone, who's calling me at this time? And he said, oh, it's me, it's me. We had coffee 6 weeks ago. I'm sorry I call you at this time, but I just can't help it. The next pivotal moment was that he convinced me to come to his house, to call a taxi. And the pivotal moment was when I sat in the taxi and it was snowing. It was winter in Tokyo. And there was this sense of, oh, if life doesn't want me to die, it will take care of the rest. And I think that was a pivotal moment in the sense of I had always sort of like swum on the surface of the ocean trying to stay afloat. And it was almost like, oh, you can just turn on your back and just let yourself be carried.